Hey, April.
Hi,
Good to see you.
you too.
Yeah, going to be part of this amazing ride we're all on.
Yes, yeah.
So many of you around the world will know April as the Knowledge Bird. I think she's got a pretty healthy Twitter following out there, and she's very well known by that name around the world. I first met April last year in Perth when she arrived at the conference and was presented with the white paper award for the Australian conference. So, and that was her fantastic paper on knowledge management. So, and I'm sure she will probably refer to that again today. That was a very good piece of writing, April.
Thank
It's,
you.
it's actually it's actually quite funny looking at your bio, is that you and I have sort of come almost to the same place, but through completely different ends of the spectrum. I've ended up in content writing and providing knowledge, having come to service management from a writing and journalism background, whereas you've come from that operational point and ended up writing the same sort of content. So it's been an interesting ride for both of us from different ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, it sure has.
So anyway, do you want to tell the world or anyone who doesn't know who you are a little bit about yourself and give us some sort of an insight into what we're going to be hearing from you today?
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad I followed Tristan actually because I'm one of those people who shouldn't be on the phones to customers. Uh, I did start in technical support, but it didn't take long to move out of the support desk into network operations, and I like to think that was my technical proficiency, that maybe it was my phone manner and I was being moved on. Uh, but yeah, I've had 13 years in IT operations, and I left IT to start doing something more creative with my time, and I got into writing, and then like you mentioned, the white paper came about because I didn't want to waste all that time that I'd had in IT, and I wanted to draw on that experience. So since then, I've ended up becoming a freelance writer, and mostly on IT and knowledge management topics. So it is certainly an interesting place that we've both kind of ended up in.
It is. It's a great place to be, actually. I mean, content, as they say, content's king, and being involved in that part of the IT world is really quite exciting at the moment, because there are so many opportunities to share that content, which, 5 years ago we didn't have these opportunities. It was very hard to get something you wrote, past your immediate environment. But now you can put something online, and before you know it, you've had 500 people read it from all parts of the globe, which is,
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty inspiring at times. So,
it is. Yeah.
but anyway, I'm going to hand this whole thing over to you and get you to start your presentation and wow us all with your knowledge bird information.
Okay. Thanks,
I'll see you
Kirsty.
see you on the other side.
Okay. Well, I'll just share my screen here uh, and start the slideshow. So thanks for joining me, and if you've been sitting patiently through the previous 7 or so hours, we've had some really interesting content so far, and I appreciate you sticking around to hear this one live. But even if you don't, it'll be staying around on the interwebs at YouTube to catch up on later. So I'm talking about knowledge management and knowledge bases in particular. I'll be talking about why knowledge management is important in general, going about and how to go about building the knowledge base, and how to keep up the motivation and the momentum. I have directed this presentation at the service desk environment because that's a lot of my background, obviously, but the advice is applicable to all sorts of working environments. I expect my presentation to be mercifully short, so there might be plenty of time at the end for questions, or at least time to throw a Pop-Tart in the toaster afterwards. I mentioned Tristan's talk and how customer orientation is probably not one of my strong points. So I'm one of those people that's in the back, second level, and that problem I have with phone support personally is what drives me to focus on building great knowledge bases, because the access to the good knowledge bases gave me a way to step through troubleshooting without getting stressed. And ultimately it can result in ticket deflection, which if you make great relevant knowledge available to the end user, that's a win for everyone, especially me. I began in technical support for a young ISP in Australia in 1997, and I moved into network operations a few months later and continued in the similar roles for most of that time.
Do you mind if I just interrupt for a second? We're not seeing your presentation. We're only seeing the your first slide sitting in the middle of your PowerPoint program.
Yes, yeah, that's okay. It'll come.
That's all right. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay, yeah, a bit of a long intro, I guess.
Okay.
I left IT support actually a couple of years ago, and my experiences along the way with knowledge management or how it was not managed is what left its greatest mark. So I think most of us here already will know what knowledge management is. It's documenting the stuff we do and the stuff that happens so we know what to do next time. It enables us to make better decisions and to do things better than we did them last time. It's my personal mission to make the lives of your operations staff easier by encouraging good knowledge management practices. IT support is a high-stress, high-churn shift working job, often involving critical decisions being made under pressure, as you know, and often without enough information. And paradoxically, you could say your NOC is the gateway of a ridiculous amount of information, but all that access to useful knowledge is often being lost and wasted. When I think about the ways knowledge has been managed in the different organisations throughout my career, the sense of disorganisation seems universal. One place I used to work kept all procedures and common troubleshooting advice in a single Word document with version control. It was a huge document, and even with that, people still had their own scratched out notes on a notepad file in their computers. And the enormous Word document had duplicate stuff, outdated stuff, names and numbers not in the system anymore. So why are we looking at this guy? Because 50% of executives are at retirement age right now. In just 10 more years, there'll be more people leaving the workforce than entering it. That's a lot of knowledge capital in those heads that is about to walk out the door. This is something that should be on the mind of every executive level manager. If this is a problem you're likely to encounter, you could consider implementing a voluntary mentoring program. But apart from this ageing population issue, what are the other practical reasons for building a good knowledge base? I've talked about ageing population, but it can also result in lower on-call costs, especially if your service desk staff can solve more incidents themselves. There's less time required for training. There's an opportunity for innovation and improvement if you're monitoring patterns of usage and listening to customer feedback. Your resolution times will be quicker. The lower stress in the environment will lower turnover. Up to 65% of employees these days are working from multiple locations during their work week. A centralised knowledge source can help keep those mobile and remote workers informed. Knowledge management is empowering, and it's reducing effort wasted on rework, and that's a win for everybody. Essentially, knowledge shared is time and effort saved, and time is money. But I want you to think about what it's like to be a service delivery manager when a critical service becomes unavailable for a number of hours. Recall that feeling of what it's like to be in a board meeting or an executive meeting trying to explain yourself and the actions of your team. There's a story I usually tell from the analyst point of view, but I want to tell it from the point of view of the manager. You could play the part of the manager. Now, this story actually happened, and I was working on the knock at the time. So, you're the one accountable for the uptime of a phone card service. The server that this phone card service ran on had locked up and it wasn't taking calls. The system administrator responsible wasn't responding to call-outs from us or from you. So what happens next? You have the knock track down the other system administrator who's away on leave. The good news is he does respond, but not only is this service failure causing a direct loss of revenue, you're also now having to authorise to pay an expensive on-call bonus to the guy who's not supposed to be on call. So how is that feeling? It gets worse. The guy that is on the phone doesn't know the administrator password for the server. So, can I hear some swearing? Maybe you're tearing your hair out? But look, don't go too far down there because I can help. I have an excellent memory, and I actually remember that the non-responding sysadmin had once told me the password to his desktop machine so I could forward a file onto him. I suggested this password as the admin password for the server, and it gets us in. Hooray, holiday guy fixes it, and we're back in business. So, situation resolved, but there are a bunch of problems there, not the least of which is a security flaw. But hoarding that sort of basic information is bound to lead to a similar kind of expensive drama eventually. In our role as ITSM professionals, knowledge management is a part of everything we do. It's a part of gathering business requirements. It's a part of designing network and services. It's a part of incident management, problem management and change control. It's essential to continual service improvement. Make it a part of every workflow so it becomes something we just do. So how do we get started though? Building a knowledge base like any project requires some planning. Get clear on who your audience is. Is it self-help for users? Is it for your own team, the operations team? Is it for other internal departments in the business? Maybe it's a combination of those things. Adding to and maintaining a knowledge base is everybody's responsibility, but having a role within each team to oversee it is helpful. It's good for quality control and avoids duplication. Decide on category labels or folder names. Don't go nuts though, too many choices becomes confusing and people will start to play pin the tail on the donkey with it. Don't provide a general or a missed category for this reason because everything will end up in there. Make sure your category names are easily understood and accepted by everyone. I know someone who says it's still an enduring problem of theirs that knowledge base articles are filed under something that makes sense to one person or another. Naturally, tool selection is a part of the process as well, a part of the planning, but that's a whole other presentation worth, and there's no reason why you can't look at what software systems you already have available. Lots and lots of people put off starting a structured knowledge base because it can feel so overwhelming. So all we can do is eat the elephant one bite at a time, yeah? First things first, create a glossary of commonly used terms and acronyms. It might seem basic of common sense, but think of the new team members who don't yet have that vernacular that you use. Corral the legacy documentation from the various locations and break it into smaller chunks as you go. And audit it as you go as well. Work out whether it's obsolete or incorrect before you add it into the knowledge base. Consider the undocumented knowledge, the procedures that take place all the time and are so well known, perhaps by only one or a few individuals, and start documenting them one at a time, one service at a time. You might be thinking that you don't need to write down what you already know how to do, but by writing those most common and well-known tasks down, it makes it easier to train new members and even to second people from other teams when you need them. This is a way of breaking down your information into more workable chunks and working through them in order of importance. Most people might start with green, but my operational background, red is critical, so that goes first. And I've got all those fundamental processes, those things that happen every day that the business won't run unless they're done. And company information like contacts and vendors. Then you can move on to your commonly occurring issues and FAQs. And then you can look at what's left, your trivial information but useful. Things that happen less often. You could do it a bit differently. The important thing is to develop a way of working through it and recognising all those small victories along the way. It just helps you feel like you're making progress. A lot of the time when your operators are accessing the knowledge base, it's while they're under pressure looking for an answer. Your language needs to be clear and the text has to be easy to read. They need to be able to find and work through the information quickly. So to help with that, I've got 2 golden rules here for you. And the first one is to be clear and concise. Don't use a long word when a short one will do. Don't use 2 words when one will do. We all get trapped with that sometimes, especially in IT and management. Being concise isn't about dumbing down though. When your readers are under pressure, they just don't have the time to read and try and process complex info. The second one here is beware the curse of knowledge. I got this phrase from a book called Made to Stick, and it's written by Chip and Dan Heath. They wrote this book from the perspective of marketing and advertising, and they were referring to what makes great ideas great. Essentially, it means that the better we come to know something, the worse we get at communicating it. We take the stuff we know for granted and we forget that others don't know. So don't assume knowledge. Place yourself in the role of the reader who knows little about the service or system. Avoid jargon and don't leave out details that seem obvious to you. Describe the issue in the words the customer would use, as well as what the problem description is according to IT. There are a couple of other things you can keep in mind. Don't do in-jokes. It's funny to read when you're working through something, but in some situations your knowledge management could be audited by a third party and the whole organisation comes off looking unprofessional. So stick to the procedures and the facts. And help your support staff get the full picture. Link to other supporting info like maps and schematics, network diagrams, previous similar cases, asset details, anything there that can help them work through troubleshooting. Knowledge base articles are often instructional, so keep to the present tense in those cases and you'll need to be clear on the steps. If you're not clear, go back to the source or someone else who knows and follow up. Ask questions and don't be shy about it because you're helping everybody. And also remember who your reader is. Tailor your message to the audience. Is it for your team or the people you support? If you're going to publish this article to a customer portal, the language you use will be different depending on your reader. If you are writing for business users, go spend some time with them. Ask them how they do things. what they could be doing more effectively and what they don't know how to do. Interview them and watch them doing their job, and don't take negative feedback personally. So you might have the best, most well-written knowledge base material in history, but it's not much good if it can't be found quickly. You have to consider how searchable it is, either with a hierarchical tree structure or by searching on keywords. Think about your categories and tags like the chapters and the index items inside a book. Categories are like the chapters and the tags or keywords are like index items. When you write your article, file it in the category that makes sense. If you're unsure, get a consensus from your team members. You also need to tag it with any keywords that people might be searching on. If the system's known by other names, include all of those names, acronyms, full names. You could tag it by service name as well as device name. So as an example, say someone called reporting that Outlook was frozen. That's fairly common. That's how the customer would put it to me. I would file my article under email, but I would also tag it with Outlook, the server name, which is probably going to be email 01, and I'd also mention Exchange in the tags. That's probably it. But that way, if anybody was to search on Outlook or Exchange or the mail server name or just email, that article would come up each time. So I mentioned being easy to read. When you're formatting your knowledge base articles, stick to one style of font in black and opt for one other colour to highlight important points. Ideally, that colour should be red because the contrast of black and red against white is the most clear. Block quote any command lists to set them apart from informational text. And invest those extra seconds in reformatting your pasting so that it doesn't look weird and hard to read. So once you've created your knowledge base, you've laboured long and hard and you've got this beautiful current repository of knowledge. But it doesn't actually finish there. It's an ongoing job. You've got to nurture it by adding to it and maintaining it to keep it alive and stop it from stagnating. I've taken this article lifecycle diagram from the Knowledge Centred Support Guide. It shows you how KCS sees knowledge in the support environment as living and how this methodology can aid in regular maintenance. Now I'll go through and explain these steps in this life cycle. At the top we have a WIP, a work in progress, and this is an article that's being worked on. It has the problem or the question, but we don't yet have the resolution. Underneath that we've moved through to draft, and that's when the resolution is known, it's captured, but we might still be refining the article and adding to it or improving the structure of it. Once we've got a complete and reusable article internally, it moves through to approved, and when it's deemed appropriate for consumption by end users or customers, it's published. The rework and technical review paths there on each side, KCS consider those as optional, but I have never encountered a knowledge base that didn't need that. Every time we reuse a knowledge base article, we'll review it. And if it needs fixing, do it then or flag it. Feedback is a critical part of keeping your knowledge base rolling along. If you think about Facebook and somebody clicks like or leaves a comment on one of your status updates, that's feedback. It's an endorsement that what you've said has been funny or it's been useful. Knowledge base feedback works in the same way. Most service desk tools have a knowledge base module which allows you to flag articles and rate them and capture remarks on the quality of the article. So pick a day, once a week or a block of time per day, to regularly go through and check feedback and update with new info. Fix wrong details in your live articles as you see them. And if you notice any incorrect info in an article while you're busy with an incident, flag it or make a note to come back to, as I mentioned earlier. If you're managing people, you can build them into the analyst's KPIs to review and write a certain number of articles each week, beyond what's generated from incident reports. So that could be legacy documentation. And if your software solution doesn't have a feedback mechanism, invite your readers to contact you with feedback, or actually ask them on a regular basis. Check in with them to make sure that what you're providing them with is still relevant. Now, back a bit earlier on, I mentioned that knowledge management is empowerment. I've talked a lot about the practical benefits, the time and cost benefits of knowledge management, but I wanted also to talk about the people side of things. When your customers are empowered to resolve their own issues or assist with diagnosis through online self-help, they feel good about that. When your service desk staff and operations staff are empowered to perform routine fixes and maintenance, they feel good. They learn new things and it makes work more interesting and challenging. When your engineers can confidently hand off what they consider to be trivial or low-value tasks, they have time to innovate, find better ways to do things, find time to work on new projects in the service pipeline. Don't let people get bogged down in the busy work of knowledge-based management. Keep them aware of the bigger picture. The benefits of knowledge management are most obvious at the ground level, so be sure to pass that sense of empowerment up the chain to keep other teams involved and interested. And I know I've made that sound pretty simple, and it would be really if it weren't for the egos and some other barriers that we find in IT. Now, throughout my career in IT departments, I've consistently seen the same kinds of behaviours. Socially, we all get along quite well with each other in IT, but when we're at work doing our jobs, something is not quite right. When you think about our group as a functional group inside a business, we in IT are kind of unique. The HR teams have their own policies and culture. Call centres have their own policies and culture. Sales and marketing do what they do. But when we get to IT, there's a bunch of subgroups, each with their own ways of doing things, quirks, if you like. There's infrastructure and engineering. There's applications, DBAs, IT support and the service desk. You might have a project management office in there. Sometimes it's like the Tower of Babel in the basement, and we don't always understand each other. There's misaligned expectations, mismatched intentions, and we just don't get the knowledge flow that we need in IT to operate most effectively. So to illustrate that, why don't we go through a typical experience on a knock? I take a call from someone with an incident. Now, I have a healthy sense of urgency being in a role like that, so I'm in a hurry to find a resolution. I'm a little embarrassed already that I don't just know the answer, but I'm also getting stressed because I can't find the answer in our poorly maintained knowledge base. Eventually I'm forced to give up and escalate it, but I can't relax there because I have to keep an eye on the SLA. Because when the service level agreement's blown, it's me whose name is on the ticket, and I look like an idiot to my caller, even though the management might be entirely aware of what's happening behind the scenes. So here I am sweating on engineering, who say there's no ETA, it'll be fixed when it's fixed. There's a communication breakdown within IT that other groups don't seem to suffer nearly as much. Of course, in the end, yes, it is fixed, but I feel foolish and the engineer comes up the hero who put the fire out. Now, don't get me wrong though, some of my best friends are engineers, like Linda, but engineers like to be heroes. Some will routinely hoard knowledge to ensure it.
But what I don't get is this. If engineers really like putting out fires, aren't they working in the wrong part of IT? Engineers, by definition, should be building, improving, and innovating. It's the analysts who are taking the emergency calls. Good knowledge management helps them put the fire out as well. Ongoing knowledge management requires a change in our hero worshipping culture. Put the onus on the hero to document their resolution so we can all learn from it and avoid the blown SLA next time round. Encourage a shift in attitude so the Tier 3 groups build and innovate while empowering the NOC staff and service desk with the knowledge to solve more issues and perform uncomplicated preventive maintenance. So how about those subcultures of IT? How can we work with those to advance the cause of knowledge management? By having an organic knowledge management strategy where the creating, updating and rewarding goes on at the grassroots within each IT subculture is more likely to stick than having directives sent from the top. It's not siloing because we are all using the same searchable knowledge base, but it's working on a cycle that suits each individual team. Find a knowledge champion in each IT subgroup and acknowledge their leading by example. Empower them with the right to improve on their own team strategy and to share those perceived low-value tasks with other operational teams. Gamification can help, acknowledging the desired behaviours and rewarding the exceptionally good ones. It's essentially bribery, but look, we're a competitive species. Most people respond well to it, so I don't have a problem with it. And having your executive on board with sponsoring rewards in that case is helpful. Small rewards like a gift card or a free lunch is often all it takes to motivate. So, knowledge management in 3 easy steps. Take small steps and celebrate the small victories along the way as you're building your knowledge base. Use simple language so everyone can understand it. And spread the love of knowledge through empowerment and bribery, whether that's through gamification or milestones or rewards. That's really all there is in this presentation. Thanks for sticking with me. If you've got any questions, stand by because I'll be appearing in the Hangout with Kirsty to answer any questions. And I hope I get to see you presenting in next year's TFT.
Hey everyone, well I'm back here but I haven't got April at the moment. I'm just going to bring Chris Dancy online with us now. Just hang on for one moment. So unfortunately we've had some sort of a technical glitch and have not been able to get April back online. If you're out there, April, see if you can join us anyway. There's a few invitations out there for you. So, Chris will be joining us momentarily. And here he is, the man himself. Hi, Chris.
What is this that we are having technical difficulties? How is this possible?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it never happens in IT, does it?
No. But thank goodness for good editing. So I actually, through the magic of technology, and it's not that magical at all, I actually have April in a chat window. Yeah. So did we? Yeah. Well, yeah. I've got her in a little chat window here. She's trying to get logged back in. Yeah. And we'll just give her a second to try that. As far as questions, did we get anybody out from Twitter yet who had anything to ask her? I know I saw some.
Yeah, we've had a few comments and no questions as such. I think April's presentation explains things so well that people are making some great comments. But here she is. She's coming. April, you're here.
Yeah.
Never make a queen come in where a lady will do. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, Chris. See you soon. Here she is.
Yes.
April, you're here.
Yes, I do not know what happened. I do not know what happened there. It was some PowerPoint and Hangout drama, but here we are.
Yeah, you're back again. So, I mean, as always, your the information you give out there on knowledge management is just as powerful and useful, and we need to be able to follow it. That, I mean, we're all in the business of managing knowledge and sharing knowledge. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's been plenty of comments coming through. You know, it's like Rod Ware's one, commenting on your don't use a long word when a diminutive one will do. That's actually coming up in my presentation is, you know, don't write 5 pages when you only need 50 words.
Yeah, and I wanted to give a bit of a hat tip to Charles, because he actually brought up that curse of knowledge a few hours back in his presentation, and he talked about you can't unknow something that you know, and that was the spirit of the one I mentioned as well, the curse of knowledge, and just trying to put yourself in the role of someone who doesn't know. Yeah,
that's right, and it is actually really hard to do that. It's hard to see it from your customer's point of view, and to get that, or from your service desk point of view when they're trying to fix something. You just expect them to know what you know.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't work that way. You've got to explain things that you think are so basic that everybody should know them.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I've had trouble over the years with documentation that has been written at a sort of high-level technical mumbo-jumbo kind of thing, and you've got to sort of try and remember that sometimes you get people on the service desk who are new, or they're from another department and they don't have your vernacular. So trying to step back a bit is really helpful in your documentation.
Yeah. I think something too that people often overdo too is over explaining things. If you have a reasonably technical service desk, you don't want to give them 50 different steps to follow, because you know, if they go searching for an article and they come up with you know, 50, you know, 100 bullet points that they're supposed to follow through, they're just going to look at it and say, you've got to be joking. You've got to learn how to actually target the information you're writing to the people who are going to be using it.
Yeah, that's right.
So what are your current projects at the moment, April? What are you working on?
At the moment, I have a client who has a web-based application, so I'm building their knowledge base for them in a sort of self-service forum style. Yep. And also I'm writing content for Zendesk and producing blog posts and reviewing white papers and doing all that sort of thing. And a lot of it's IT oriented, but not only IT. So yeah, it's good to know there's plenty of work out there for those few of us who have both the technical and the creative side of things. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Right. A little message here from James Gander on the Twitter sphere, just to say that he's using your presentation and information with the current client he's working with at the moment. So you know, certainly it's great when you know that the work that you've produced is actually being used by someone in a practical situation, that it's not just theory that's not practical. Just
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone hasn't read Aprill's knowledge management paper, it's a beautiful, concise, you know, if you follow it, you can get the sort of knowledge that you need. It's that easy to use knowledge that's accessible to everybody, which is what we're after. I mean, so many people out there in IT know how to write all the convoluted stuff, and they actually don't know how to write the simple stuff, how to make it easy to understand. And just about anything can be broken down into chunks that are easy to understand.
Yeah, and I do think that the social media aspect to our communication these days is forcing people to write in more consumable ways, so smaller chunks, and And so I think maybe it's a skill that will develop in some sense.
Yeah, no, I think it is. So, April, is there anything else you want to make sure that people have understood about knowledge management? Is there what are your key takeaways for people? What do you think people should go back and look at in their own organisations now when it comes to knowledge management? What can they learn from what you've told them that they can use tomorrow and next week and the week after?
Yeah. I think go back and look at how much work you're repeating, like how many incidents, for example, that happen repeatedly, and maybe those are things that we can document and even push towards the user. They call it shifting left, and it's like pushing a bit of that work directly to the user, but in a self-help sort of situation, and that relieves the service desk a little more to tackle the problems that are probably still lingering, and the engineers can start making improvements and working in the service pipeline with some things that are coming down the line. So even though it might be a scary notion to release some of that knowledge out there, it buys you so much time. Investing up front buys you so much time that you can actually use that and do better things and make better decisions. So that's my one key thing, to try and drive people away from this idea that they need to be careful of keeping their knowledge to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that is something you see, and it's certainly one organisation I worked in for a few years. It was, people were so scared to share the knowledge because they thought that made their jobs vulnerable, that, once everybody knew what they knew, their job was no longer safe. But,
yeah.
I mean, really, that's not right. The more you share the knowledge you have, the more chances you've got to move on to something more interesting. You can't.
Yeah, that's right.
You're never going to be able to extend your own job satisfaction if you're doing the same thing over and over again because nobody else knows how to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, holding that knowledge to yourself is not a good way to keep your job.
No, and being more open and sharing with knowledge, it just drives a culture of trust, which has come up a couple of times already today, and respect. And I can remember sort of having had engineers in the past who were sort of talking at high speed, high level, and not really trying to relate to the circumstances I was in. And the next time I had an issue, I wanted to do everything I could to not have to go back to that person. So by opening up and relating to people and sharing what you know more generously, it builds those bridges a lot quicker.
Yeah, I think also what it can do is, if you're sitting on the service desk and you keep getting calls in that you can't answer, that can be quite demoralising. But if you've got good knowledge in place that you can find easily and you can solve those calls for people, that does two things. It improves the self-esteem of the people you've got working on the service desk, because for a start they're providing the service they want to provide and keeping the customers happy, and they're learning things as they go. So the next time they have to solve that call, it's going to be easier for a start. But the other thing it's doing, it's really improving your customer satisfaction levels, because they've only had to make one call. The person who's answered the phone can fix it for them. They don't have to wait for you to refer it to someone else and come back to them again. So, good knowledge sharing, it boosts everyone in the IT department and in the business, because it just gets people working quicker. It gives you better job satisfaction. It's a no-brainer, isn't it, to share your knowledge wisely and concisely and in easily digestible formats.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, anyway, April, if unless there's anything else you'd like to add right now to
No, that's great. I've been watching the tweets, and if anybody's got any other questions that arise later on, just send me an email or a direct message, and I'll get back to you. But otherwise, this has been fun, even with the gremlins.
Yeah, we had to get a gremlin somewhere along the way. It's just a pity it had to be. But we coped all right. A little bit of creative editing, we'll see that video looking fine.
No problem.
Thanks for your time, April. It's been an absolute pleasure having you online this afternoon.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.